Welcome back. I'm R.K. Preston, author of Sea Change. Sea Change is my debut novel in the Roe v. Wave series, following Keith and Andrea as they endeavor to sail around the world. Today we'll be reading the first chapter of our story. Sea Change, Chapter 1. A life spent reading teaches that a story's merit can be salvaged or shattered by its ending. A good ending will make a good story sing and a bad story bearable. A bad ending and all that preceded it is so much trash. So it didn't matter that the year held great promise. In the end, it was a bad year. My promotion required a move from New York City to Fort Lauderdale, a chance at more money, more sun, and a fresh start. God knows I needed a fresh start. Rather, we needed a fresh start. The most telling aspect of the morass we found ourselves in was the labored nature of our conversations. Exchanges that had once been spontaneous and limitless were now forced, with a predilection toward safe topics. Topics such as your day, my day, groceries, and the weather were the new staples of our intercourse. In this, we were fortunate because the beginning of December in Manhattan gave plenty of opportunity to discuss the weather. Arctic blasts that whistle down the canyons of Midtown are plentiful fodder for comment. Wistful pillow talk about our dreams, desires, and the future were a thing of the past. Whatever the status of our relationship, we were always an efficient team. As we made plans for the move to Fort Lauderdale, there was a palpable decrease in the tension of our relationship. A fact I attributed to the two of us pulling together toward a shared goal and a renewed dream. Even the sex was better. How we would survive a long-distance relationship for the few months we would be apart was a frequent part of our discussions. But I learned it was never a part of her plans. A week after I moved into our new apartment in Fort Lauderdale, she let me know that it was never going to be our apartment. She had no intention of leaving the city, and she had no wish to have me back. What had been our plans had been my plans. She had other plans, and I was not a part of them. She wished me luck. 6 months alone was enough time to dissect the last 2 years of our lives together, and during long hours unfilled by work or other distractions, I pieced together a narrative very different from the lies I told myself. Recognizing this truth did not make me wiser. It just made me lonelier. A truth made more difficult because I realized that I was not only alone, but I was a fool. The clues to a dying relationship had been plentiful, but I ignored them to remain in my own cloud cuckoo land. As I walked home from my last failed date, the last scene played a loop in my head. The light from the restaurant window illuminating our two figures as if we were actors upon a stage. "Michelle, would you like to get together this weekend?" I asked, genuinely hopeful. "Keith, I don't think so. You are a nice guy, tall and pretty good-looking, but you are still in love with your ex-girlfriend. We spent the night talking about you, our first date, and I know more about your last girlfriend than you know about me. You aren't ready to let go of the past." The accuracy of that statement was undeniable, and so I didn't. I could not remember anything about her, and worse, I could not remember asking. "I understand," was all that I could think to say. "Keith, to be honest, I don't think you can say why you asked me for a second date." Truth be told, I couldn't. Other than it seemed to be what was expected. I did know that I couldn't absorb any more of her analysis, and so cut off the conversation rather than try and rescue it. "Michelle, thank you for tonight, and I'm sorry. Can I walk you back to your apartment?" "Thanks, but that isn't necessary. I can get home on my own. It's early, and it is only a few blocks. Good luck, Keith," she said as she kindly stepped off in a direction different than mine. Her honesty was more devastating than my last few dates who merely ghosted me. At least being ghosted allows you to invent lies to preserve your ego. With Michelle, there was no hiding from the truth. It didn't really matter, though, because she confirmed that I could convince a woman that I was a fool in a single date. Who talks about their ex on a first date? Who wants to be with a fool? I needed a change. I needed to get my head right. I had 2 weeks of vacation coming and I needed to use it. But how best to get myself right? The water had always been where I'd found my peace. I researched sailing clubs in Lauderdale in the halcyon days before my life went to hell, and joined the club during that golden week of promise between coming to Florida and being in Florida alone. I was a regular at the club and offered myself as rail meat to anyone who needed crew for the Wednesday night beer can races. Occasionally I would find a spot crewing on the more formal races that came up from time to time, but mostly I hooked up with other club members for a weekend sail. On the water, my mind was too preoccupied with the elements to think on anything else. I was at the club for a day sail with friends on a J-24 when I spied out a sign pinned to the message board advertising for crew to reposition a 37-foot Beneteau from Fort Lauderdale to Tortola BVI. A quick search on my phone revealed that this would require roughly 1,200 miles of Atlantic Ocean to reach the British Virgin Islands. I had long dreamed of a blue water trip, but the time was never right, and there were always other responsibilities. To hell with it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my PTO. Phone in hand, I dialed. Hello? Hello, I saw your posting at the marina. My name's Keith, and I might be interested in crewing for you. Might be interested? Even as I said the words, I couldn't believe I was playing hard to get. Fortunately, she picked up the conversation. Keith, thank you for calling. My name's Andrea. Let me tell you a little bit about the trip. My plan is to move my boat to Tortola for the winter, and I'd like to be on the water sometime in the next few weeks to avoid the worst of the hurricane season. My hope is to set sail on the 4th of July weekend. I expect we'll be on the water from 10 days to 2 weeks. Does that work for you? She said. The Caribbean hurricane season begins in June and ends in early December, but doesn't peak until September. Jumping off to avoid the hurricane season made sense, but only a couple weeks' notice to find crew for a considerable trip struck me as suspicious. Suspicions I kept to myself. I was not going to say anything to get myself eliminated. I think I can make that work. 2 weeks is no problem, and I have more than that saved up, and work is slow. I responded eagerly. Giving the details of my PTO was certainly too much information and evidence of my nervousness. If necessary, I could even take a few extra days on either side to act as a cushion if the sailing gods didn't cooperate. Not caring much about the answer, but trying to sound serious, I asked, how would you like to split the cost? I was thinking we would split the cost of provisions, and you would have to cover your own flight back, Andrea answered, with just a touch of concern in her voice. That would be fine, I responded. Hell, if I was being honest with myself, anything would have been fine. During the call, we briefly reviewed my sailing resume, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice when I confessed my absence of blue water experience. Andrea finished the conversation with, Keith, sounds great. What do you say we meet at the marina Thursday at 5 and take the boat out for a couple of hours? I think I answered even before she finished her last sentence. Sounds wonderful. I look forward to it. Getting together was a worthwhile suggestion, as no one with any sense is going to sail over 1,000 miles of ocean with someone who can't manage a boat or might be an ass. I knew how to sail. I would try not to be an ass. When we hung up, I realized that I had not asked her about her experience and her ability to navigate the miles to the BVI. I was so hungry for this trip that I was blind to the risk to my own skin that might come from the possibility of an untested skipper on a relatively small boat. Perhaps not asking was not so much a death wish, but a life wish. I was truly desperate for a change. I knew from experience that a 37-foot boat does not leave much personal space, and sailing 24/7 does not leave much leeway if the person you are with is incompetent or irritating. The invitation for a couple of hours on the water was an interview, pure and simple. By Thursday evening, the trip had captured my imagination, and I was more nervous interviewing for this opportunity than if I was applying for a new job or going on a date. I laid out multiple outfits on the bed before settling on a pair of khaki shorts, a t-shirt, and a blue short-sleeve shirt over the top of it. Docksiders and a baseball cap with the insignia of my old boat club in New York would finish the ensemble. A last look in the mirror before heading out the door showed that 6 months of Florida sun had replaced my New York pallor, and my regular attendance at the gym I had exchanged for my love life had left its mark as well. It was me, for better or worse. I dressed quickly and grabbed my PFD before heading out the door to the marina. I checked the weather on my phone one more time. Winds were from the southeast and blowing 9 to 12 knots, with gusts to 17, and the waves were running 2 to 3 feet. Good weather for an evening sail, and with sunset at 8:30 p.m., we would only be out for a couple of hours. I want to say that I've added some bonus material to my reading of Chapter 1, and so in a few moments I will share with you my recent sailing adventure. As always, if you would like further installments of Sea Change, please leave your comments below. This is R.K. Preston saying, good day and good reading. If you'd like to know more about the Roe v. Wave series, please go to my website at rkpreston.com. Thank you. Sailing is my passion. Recently, I had the opportunity to indulge that passion by signing on as crew for a trip from Falmouth, England to Vigo, Spain, a trip that would take us across the Bay of Biscay. Biscay is a body of water with a deserved reputation for being challenging. It is known for foul weather and tough sailing conditions. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Flying from San Francisco to London and taking the train to Falmouth took the better part of a day, a night, and a day. Arriving in the late afternoon, I took a quick nap before exploring the welcoming streets of Falmouth, a delightful Cornish seaside city. The next day, waking to a hearty English breakfast, I explored the town and made ready to join the boat. My home for the next 12 days would be Hummingbird, a Clipper 60 sailboat, a blue water sailor. The Clipper was built for around-the-world yacht races. We had a skipper and a first mate, and I was one of 7 crew who paid to experience the rough weather and difficult sailing conditions common to the Bay of Biscay. I had an upper berth in the single cabin of the boat. My crewmates each had their own bunk, and we shared a common head. As befitting his rank, the skipper would be the only person to get his own space, and that wasn't much. Our gear stowed, we spent the first day in a classroom preparing ourselves to sail Hummingbird to Spain. Early the next morning, we donned our foul weather gear and set sail under an overcast day and with a cold wind as we ventured into the North Atlantic. We were split into 3 teams. Each team took its watch on deck for 3 hours and then off for 6. During our off hours, we had to cook for each other, clean the boat, and catch what rest we could. It was positively glorious. From these few pictures, I hope you can sense the sublime beauty of sailing, the chance to be one with the sea and the elements, and to challenge yourself. The opportunity to behold the sunset at sea, or to have the helm at night when the boat is quiet and you are serenaded by the musical hum of the wind through the rigging and the low burbling of water rushing past the hull, is absolutely extraordinary. And well worth being cold, wet, and for some of the crew, seasick. Making landfall in Vivero, Spain, we took advantage of a shower in the marina and the opportunity to come ashore like sailors of old, looking for a drink and a good meal. The next week was spent coastal cruising as we worked our way from Vivero to Vigo. I must say Spain is a beautiful country, friendly, steeped in history, cities full of family, friends, and camaraderie in the squares and in the cafes that line the street. A country that is alive until late in the evening with the sound of companionable laughter. Arriving in Vigo, and after a final night's celebration, I bid my shipmates adieu and readied myself for the long trip home. Thank you for sharing these last few minutes with me. This is R.K. Preston, leaving you with a few words from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. To reach a port, we must set sail. Sail, not tie at anchor. Sail, not drift.